Hello, everybody. This is Colin Tansley from the Ice Bath podcast. This is episode 11. And I'm delighted to have with me today Ray Blake, who is well known for his work with the Dark Money Files, which we are going to touch on today. Humbled that you've been able to join us, Ray. Very pleased. And I'm sure anybody who's listening to the podcast is going to thoroughly enjoy what you've got to say.
Oof, that's a bold claim, Colin, but thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
No, thank you very much. So I think one of the areas we're going to sort of look at is obviously financial crime, because that's the subject of the podcast. But if a criminal is involved in financial crime, why would they be interested in companies? What is the purpose?
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, we always say, I think that that a financial criminal would use a legal entity such as a company for much the same reasons that in the old days a burglar would have worn gloves.
Yeah.
It kind of separates the individual committing the crime from the crime itself. It's a layer of potentially several layers of protection.
Yeah. So, and I know you do an awful lot of work around this because you've also got a piece of software. And I regularly see your posts on you and Graham on talking about particular addresses. And certainly when I'm doing my own due diligence for companies, one of the big giveaways is addresses for me. And you start delving into the address and you find other things connected to it. So is there something to look for in addresses? Are there particular types of addresses?
God, yeah. I mean, I think one of the difficulties that we've kind of caused ourselves, and this goes right back to FATF really, is this focus on just looking at the customer.
Yeah.
So when you just look at the customer, when you have to kind of identify and verify the customer, the corporate customer, and when you have to identify its ownership and control structure and verify UBOs and all those things, that's great, but you are looking down a microscope at one data point. So you do all of those things, you meet all of your legal obligations, you know who all the people involved in the company are, but what you don't necessarily know is the fact that that guy who you very carefully identified and verified and you got a passport copy for has previously set up 25 different companies in different parts of the world. And all of the ones in the UK have been struck off before they ever filed accounts. Now, if all you do is meet your legal obligations for onboarding that customer, you'd never know that.
No, exactly.
Nor would you know that that was one of 500 companies set up at that address in the same week. Or more iniquitous, that it was one of 10 companies set up in a row of houses in a suburban street that day with the same standard industry classification code, which is about, I don't know, mining fertilizers.
Which is a bit of a worry, isn't
it? but all of these things, if you only look at the one company and you tick all the boxes, it's all golden.
And there is an element, I think, of not making too much trouble for yourself as a business by thinking, I don't really want to go that far. Do you think? Did you see that very much? Because
oh, definitely. I mean, you can go as far as you want in due diligence. You can get absolutely forensic on things. Now, sometimes you don't want to because it's not worth it in view of the perceived risks. When you see that something is fairly reliably low risk, why would you do all of that?
Exactly.
But the trouble is you have to look far enough to be able to be confident that it's low risk. If you choose not to look far enough to reliably understand whether it's low risk or not, that's when you get into trouble. And the old saying is there are none so blind as those who won't see. You find what you look for, and if you don't look for something, you won't find it.
No.
So I think by all means be proportionate, be risk based, but take minimum steps to understand the risk exposure before you make that call.
And I think the term "know your customer" actually limits that to a sense, because it's almost saying know the person as opposed to what they are connected to.
Yeah, I think the better phrase is understand your customer and their environment.
Yes, that'd be great, wouldn't it? That would make so much more sense. And you've got to KYC has exhausted itself. I think. I just think it's nowadays, in particular, with the access to all these global assets at our fingertips.
Yeah,
you've got to know more than the customer.
Yeah.
So, but you did this. Fairly, there was a terraced house, wasn't there? Was it in Lancashire that had connections to a load of different companies?
Oh, there are any number, and one of the stories that we tell is about a house in central London. In fact, in the Prime Minister's constituency, which has got a blue plaque on the wall because it's where Roger Lloyd Pack used to live.
Right.
Who's Trigger, of course, from Only Fools and
Horses. Of course, yeah.
For our UK viewers.
Yeah.
And about a year or so ago, that attracted a huge influx of new companies being registered there.
Yeah.
We're talking dozens and dozens of identical cookie cutter companies with 4 standard industry classification codes that just didn't go together at all. So there was specialist pet retailers and flower sellers and clothing manufacturers and all of these things that you would never have a business that does that.
No,
but they all set up at that address. I mean, exactly what's going on there, we never quite got to the bottom of.
Okay.
But we see a lot of this, and Companies House call it virtual squatting.
Right.
It's where you go and set up a company, and rather than using an address that you own or an address that you've rented and have access to, you just choose anyone's address.
Yeah.
In the knowledge that it won't be checked or verified at Companies House. And by the time paperwork goes out to that address and people can cry foul, well, by then you've onboarded and you're doing business and nobody cares anymore.
Yeah. Well, how could that be prevented then?
Well, Companies House could verify, if they wanted to, any address that was asserted on the register.
Yeah.
Now, Parliament chose not to make them do that. It was a suggested amendment to the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act of 2023.
Yeah.
But the determination came back, well, no, that would be too administratively burdensome for businesses. So instead, that administrative burden and distress and worry is palmed off onto ordinary people.
Yeah. Assumedly, they've got access to the electoral roll, just as I have as an investigator. I pay for access to that. So
anyone has, but what they haven't got is the legal powers to use it.
Yeah.
Which they have a very tight mandate. It's kind of set out in law what they can and what they can't do.
Yeah.
At the moment, they're exercising new powers that they've never had before, that they've been crying out for a long time.
Yeah.
To good effect.
Yeah.
But there's a long way to go.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of going to defend them a little bit here against quite a lot of criticism, because they have just introduced verification of the identity, if not the address, of directors and other officers and PSEs for the first time ever.
Yeah.
And well, I mean, you and I know, and anyone listening to this knows that ID&V is not a silver bullet.
No,
it's been in place in banks for decades, and bad guys, are still able to circumvent that.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting in your house shivering, before you go and try and work out the app and how to fiddle with the heatings on your thermostat, why don't you go and close the gaping windows and the wide open door first?
Yes, exactly.
And that's where we are.
Yeah, very much so. And it's about sort of defending the bricks and mortars, isn't it, as well?
Totally.
But I'm sort of going to come to the defence of Companies House as well, the registry, because certainly that is one of the most transparent registries you'll find across the world. You can find a lot of information on the registry, albeit some of it may not be quite right, and you have to verify it.
but that's the point. We can see that it's not right, and we can challenge it, and we can get it changed. That's the benefit of transparency.
Yeah. So how does that stack up against some of the other international registries? And do you think they're going to mirror what the UK are doing, or do you think there's going to be this sort of pushback from in terms of data protection because you can't see data, etc., etc.?
Yeah, well, I mean, the European Union had a bit of a false start with this. The European Union mandated in one of the earlier AML directives full transparency and accessibility across member states, and many countries were fairly well advanced in their plans when a case was brought on the basis of privacy to one of the Supreme Courts in Europe. I say one of them, there are a few. And that found in favor of the privacy argument, which kind of set back the cause of transparency a little bit. Having said that, there's been a pushback to the pushback since then. And I think that the union as a whole is going to go forward. Those registers won't necessarily be open access to everyone. They may be, you may have to demonstrate a legitimate need to access that. Like, you're an investigative journalist, or, you're an obliged entity, a regulated entity that's onboarding customers. But I think the UK registry is one of the few in the world where me as a private individual, or my mum even can just go online, pay absolutely nothing, and see who is behind the businesses that we're interacting with for free. And I think, I mean, I really love that system, and I think actually it's worth the trade-off in terms of privacy, because if you have a limited liability entity, society has written you a blank check, effectively. We've said, you can rack up pretty much unlimited debts and we will not come and pursue you for them. Once the money in the company is exhausted, we'll give you rights that are legally enforceable in our courts and in other parts of the world that aren't even available to individual people sometimes. So as a society, we're giving you a lot, and I don't think we're asking for very much back.
No, I
mean, don't get me wrong. I think privacy is a good thing. It's a worthwhile thing.
I agree.
But when people say privacy, sometimes what they really mean is secrecy. Which I don't think is a great thing.
No, you're quite right. I completely agree, and I think having visibility on a company that you may choose to do business with, or companies, it's essentially for me, in my view anyway, a crime prevention tool that you can look and see, okay, am I happy that this person says, it's one of many, I think, but it's certainly a check you would choose to do if you go about to sort of work with anybody.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise you're in a room full of people, they're all wearing masks, you got no idea who they are.
And all the other, not all the other, a lot of the other registries, it's quite difficult, and you are going in blind. And you're making a judgment across a number of different fronts about, okay, what am I seeing or not seeing here? What do I need to know?
Yeah, I mean that's not to say that you can't do it and you can't get clarity. I mean, I've been in onboarding discussions where we haven't let the fact that we don't have a transparent register, we haven't let that get in the way of onboarding a good customer. If you've got the relationship with the customer where you can say, look, the Marshall Islands doesn't have an open registry, they won't tell me who owns this company that owns 90% of your holding company. You know who owns it, and you've got the paperwork.
Exactly.
If you show us that paperwork, that's good enough for us. As far as the rest of the world's concerned, that's private and they don't know it. But we have to know it.
And there are very good reasons for it, aren't there? I worked on the Isle of Man. I lived and worked there for 8 years, and it's semi-transparent register.
Okay.
You can't search for somebody by name. You can search by company, and you can purchase certain documents which may give you visibility on certain things, but it doesn't always reveal the owner, because often what happens is the UBO PSC is actually a company,
right?
The element, and then you are, from a private individual investigator point of view, up against
it.
But
so the same thing happens in the UK as well. The PSC can be a company.
Yeah.
So I mean, there are rules on the UK register about who can be a PSC and who can't, and unfortunately, they're quite widely flouted. But I mean, ultimately, it gives you something to dig further into.
Yeah, and I think one of the things my takeaway with that is that look at the reputation of that particular company. Are they likely to be involved in the bad stuff willfully? So there's always that sort of takeaway from me, but it's not always the end game.
No.
So based on what you said earlier on about the setting up companies and addresses, that could effectively happen to anybody in the UK, couldn't it? Somebody's address could be used to set up a company.
Yeah. So I had we had a call from an MLRO saying it's happened to me.
Really?
Yeah.
I frequently check my own address just in case, because it could happen to anybody. But I would suggest that's probably a good way to do it. Frequently, sort of go in and just check. But what could happen to, let's say, my address was used to set up a company that then became involved in bad stuff? What's my liability then?
Well, legally, very little, but you will have varying levels of administrative nightmare to wade through. I mean, I can share with you the example of a small house in Yorkshire where the archetypal little old lady began receiving a huge amount of post, all addressed to Asda Limited.
Really?
At her address. Eventually, she collected a big sack of something like 9 kilograms worth of post. She had knocks on the door from bailiffs. She had threatening letters from suppliers and all sorts, because somebody had decided to incorporate a company called Asda Limited using her address.
Right.
Now, Asda, when they found out about it, went to the Companies House Tribunal and said, "Can we change the name of this company, please? Because it's a little uncomfortably close to ours. We're Asda Stores Limited." And at least initially, that was kicked back and rejected as not being similar enough. So she continued to receive, all sorts of intrusive correspondence and personal visits.
So the address could be flagged essentially in an adverse way, I suppose, couldn't it? Your home address.
I mean, it could, yeah. I mean, there will be credit events that begin to stack up against that address, for instance, all of which are undoable.
Yeah.
But I mean, who's got the time and capability to stay on top of all of that?
Yeah. And what is there a particular? And have you ever got to the sort of to the point of actually investigating a particular address and uncovered what types of crime, or presumably it's crime, that they're involved with, or what is there a particular type of?
Yeah, I mean there are lots, and the vast majority of this is about trading in the UK or in the EU fraudulently from a UK entity,
right,
without paying VAT. So, for instance, the typology here is you set up a UK company as a non-resident from outside the country. You can do that. You don't need any UK presence, rather, to own a UK company. You set it up. You go to Amazon or Alibaba or Temu or B&Q even do this. And you establish yourself as a third-party seller on that platform. And you supply, potentially, if you want to, a VAT number, if you want the platform to kind of add VAT onto your orders. And although it's a loophole that will be closing, it's been wide open for years. You then charge VAT on all of your sales, but of course that never goes anywhere near HMRC, which means you can undercut people who are playing by the rules by 20% or whatever.
Wow.
And maintain the same margin. So, that's been done on industrial scales. Some days there are 400 new companies set up to do that.
I mean, that's something I didn't know. That's horrendous, isn't it? When you think about the likes of all these global marketplaces like Amazon, your eBay.
I mean, the loss to the exchequer is phenomenal, and it's absolutely brazen. I mean, let me give you an example of one that we're tracking at the moment, and this again has been going on for years and years. You have a South Korean or more commonly a Chinese director who gives an address in rural China, who signs up to one of the mass incorporation addresses that I think we're all very familiar with, and calls the company Colin Tansley Limited, which you're perfectly, able to do. No one's going to kick it out unless you use certain reserved words like bank, for instance.
Right.
You're not a bank.
Yeah.
So Colin Tansley Limited is now set up. They've got a certificate of incorporation the same day. Now, if it turns out that there is a chap called Colin Tansley who has a valid current VAT registration number, wouldn't it be interesting if that company, the new company, Colin Tansley Limited, went on board with an online marketplace and gave them the VAT number for Colin Tansley, the individual? How many people do you think would understand the difference between Colin Tansley and Colin Tansley Limited?
No, they don't.
No. So there are about a dozen companies like that are set up every day in the UK at the moment with the real name of a person, which is different from the names of the directors and the PSC, and is the same as a name that's on the UK VAT registration right now. That's happening daily and continues to.
So, assumedly, there'll be a batch of addresses that are common, aren't there? I'm guessing that we're not.
There are. Not all of this happens at mass incorporation addresses, but lots of it does, Colin, because it's easy and convenient.
So why? Surely the solution is, and I know we've talked about what Companies House should and shouldn't do, that if a certain address in a certain batch appears, then that should be flagged for further checks. That would surely stop a percentage of.
Well, it can be, and it is. And Companies House have improved enormously in the last few months in finding this stuff and getting it shut down. The trouble is they haven't got many powers to refuse access to the register. So what they can do is, after it's registered, they can then remove addresses from register and they can initiate strike off. Now, unfortunately, as you and I know, by the time that address is struck from the register, the criminal has got access to the services that they need. They've onboarded. So I think the fastest I've seen is something like 5 or 6 days between registration and issue of the certificate of incorporation, and then the RP, RP09, RP10 filing that then closes down that address and removes it from the register. Well, by then, how many letters have gone out?
Exactly.
How many legal agreements have been concluded? How many onboards are now complete and won't be looked at again for another year, if then?
It's scary, and it really is. You've shone a light into a corner for me, and it's sort of, I think there is an assumption that it's sort of the sort of more generic types of crime that's associated with this, but the online sort of trading stuff, I was blissfully unaware of, to be fair.
Well, there's that. There's also impersonation. Obviously, we see an awful lot of incorporations with names which, if you just squint slightly, look like household names and the kind of invoices that you would pay without thinking about. And there are all sorts of other fairly villainly typologies as well, but certainly the biggest bit is almost legitimate. It's people who are trying to trade. I mean, to give you another example of this, and I think this is probably, entirely legitimate, but you may consider that it's an abuse of our facilities. You may not. I don't know. If you are in Pakistan as a Pakistani individual and you want to sell goods online, one of the things that you're going to want is a PayPal account. Now, the problem with that is that PayPal will not service you if you are a Pakistani individual in Pakistan.
Okay.
So an industry has arisen in Karachi, Islamabad, Lahore, and in London and Manchester and Birmingham as well, with agencies who will set you up a UK entity, a UK limited company with you as the sole director and the PSC. And through that entity, you can now sign up with PayPal. And there you go. You haven't moved anywhere. You're doing the same business, but suddenly you can accept PayPal payments. Now, if you are cognizant of your obligations in the UK and you do the right thing and you file accounts and you pay the tax that you're supposed to pay, then there's no argument. Right. But what generally tends to happen is that all of those companies are struck off after 18 months because they don't file any accounts. And that's the kind of natural outcome. But of course, during those 18 months, you can do loads. And we've also found just because your company is struck off doesn't mean that it can't continue doing business with a whole range of services.
And again, are people going to check?
No, and but absolutely right. Not on a timely basis would be our experience.
No. Oof. That has been fascinating, and I've really enjoyed the discussion today. I know we try and keep to about sort of 25 minutes, and there's been so much packed into that. I'm really grateful for coming on. I'm sure anybody listening is going to be better positioned and more knowledgeable about all this. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Sure. No, you're more than welcome, Colin.
So enjoy, people, and obviously like, comment, share, etc. We really appreciate that. And thanks again, Ray, for coming on.
You're most welcome. Bye-bye.